All right, everyone, this is Matthew. You've been giving us our last thermodynamic talk today, and it is on air conditioning.
Hello guys, my name is Matthew Morgan and I'll be giving a talk on air conditioning. So I know you're probably thinking, what is air conditioning? Well, air conditioning is a system that controls temperature in an enclosed space. Places like cars and houses and anything that's enclosed that's colder than the outside air usually has air conditioning. Typically people think of cooling when they hear air conditioning, but it also could be heating. So what an air conditioner uses to transfer heat from one environment to the other is a refrigerant. The refrigerant is some sort of gas or liquid that transfers heat, and when it's compressed, it'll heat up, and when it expands, it'll cool down. So there's four major parts that are required for an air conditioning system. First is the compressor, then the condenser, then the expansion valve, and the evaporator. You can see this is a picture of the entire cycle here. There's also fans. These fans are used for forced convection, but if they weren't there, the system would still work using free convection. So we'll go through each one of the parts individually. First is the compressor. So refrigerant enters the compressor at a cool temperature or room temperature, and the compressor will increase the pressure of the refrigerant, which, like I said earlier, will cause the refrigerant to heat up. When it leaves the compressor, it'll be hot. And when it leaves, the refrigerant must be hotter than the ambient air and on the warm outside air for the cycle to work. So next is the condenser. The condenser is basically a set of coils that the refrigerant runs through. This increases the surface area and allows for more heat transfer to take place. A fan typically blows through them for forced convection. The hot refrigerant enters, travels through the condenser and cools, and then the refrigerant leaves at a lower temperature than it entered. Next is the expansion valve. So the expansion valve is where the refrigerant goes next. So it'll enter at a warm temperature, and then it'll go through a throttling process, expand, and then come out very, very cold. A lot of times when it comes out, it'll be so cold that condensation will form around the pipes, and then so there's typically some sort of drain to drain the condensation away so you don't flood your house. Finally, it enters the evaporator. This is where the actual air conditioning part actually happens. So the cold refrigerant enters, and this makes the coils very, very cold. Fan blows through these coils, and this is what you feel whenever you have your hand by an air conditioning unit. This is what happens. And the air conditioning. So the thermodynamics of it, you see there's work in, and heat goes from a hot temperature to a cold temperature. The way you measure, instead of using efficiency like a lot of processes, typically refrigerators use the coefficient of performance to see how well they're working. This relates the heat out to the work in. An ideal coefficient of performance you can see on the right here. It's the Carnot case. This is without any losses, an isentropic case. You just need the high and low temperatures to calculate that, and that would be your base mark. You can never go higher than your Carnot coefficient of performance. So, like I said at the beginning, it can also be used for heating. The main difference would just be to switch where the warm air and where the cold air is blowing. So in this case, instead of having the evaporator blow into your house, the evaporator would be blowing outside, and this would be blowing to the inside of your house, and it would be warm air coming in. And finally, this is the exact same cycle that refrigerators use. It's just on a lot smaller. Refrigerators use the same cycle on a smaller scale. They typically have some small design differences. For instance, there's no fan blowing over the hot coils on the back of the refrigerator, because that would cause your house to get hot. So they typically just let that have free convection on that on the refrigerator itself. And they also use different refrigerators a lot of times, just because of the temperatures are a lot colder than in your home. All right. Any questions? No?